You guys seem to really like my Dinosaurs of the Jurassic franchise videos, and I certainly had a lot of fun making those. So I figured we can continue that little series and just take a look at a lot of other dinosaur projects, and take a look at their creatures, take a look at their designs, and talk about that creature in general. Initially, I was going to continue it by doing like Camp Cretaceous and then Chaos Theory, but I kind of want to take a break from the Jurassic franchise when it comes to these things. That's been like a lot of what my content's been focused on the last couple weeks. So instead, I figured we can do another dinosaur movie known as The Valley of Gwangi. The Wild West meets dinosaurs, which is a very cool concept to me. And it's crazy that we haven't gotten too many films that are like this. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first creature that we're introduced to is the Eohippus, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's an early horse. It's like an early equid that was very small and very different from what we would, picture when we think of horses. Horse evolution in general is very fascinating because you have like a nice little curve as you see these individual species or individual genera slowly transition into what we now know as modern day horses. Eohippus is often like presented as like the staple child for that because it's a very small modern day horse relative that also has like 4 digits on its front limbs and 3 digits on its hind limbs instead of the traditional one that you find on modern day horses. Each individual finger and toe that they have on each foot leads into its own little individual hoof, which is also a very interesting thing. And generally speaking, the Eohippus that we see in the Valley of Gwangi looks pretty good. It looks pretty much how most reconstructions would portray the animal. Small, covered in fur with the proper amount of digits on each foot. Like again, you have 4 toes on the front feet and then 3 toes on the back feet. It's also very cool to see it right next to the modern day horse. It's just a nice little contrast thing right there. Really, I don't have too many notes about the Eohippus. I think that they did a very good job at portraying it, and of course the stop motion in this film I think is very good. Next up is the Pteranodon, and you can tell that this is very much a dated depiction of the animal. If you don't know, the Valley of Gwangi did release in 1969, so a lot of these depictions will be fairly dated from what we now know of these animals. The Pteranodon is a pretty good example. At the time, pterosaurs were quite frequently portrayed as these sort of reptilian bat creatures, as in like their wings looked a lot more bat-like than they do, than how you would see them nowadays. Like it has multiple individual fingers that kind of move all the way down and like separate the wings into these little segments. You don't really see that with modern day pterosaur reconstructions because that's not really something that they had. Rather, it would have been just like one long finger that would have, covered, like carried the whole membrane and connected it to the rest of the body. It's also lacking the pycnofibers, which are these little feathers that pterosaurs did possess as well. That aside, though, the skull shape is pretty good. Like this is obviously Pteranodon longiceps. You can tell because of the shape of its crest. Pteranodon longiceps has a crest that is a lot more like thin and kind of like banana shaped in general. And the beak also looks pretty decent as well. It's also sporting this sort of striking purple coloration, which is very interesting. I wonder if we'll see that again. Moving on from that, we have the Ornithomimus, which is a very cool addition to the movie. Ornithomimus is an ornithomimid, of course, and generally their whole body appearance does resemble modern day ostriches or ratites in general, and the fact that they have like a long neck with a relatively small head with these huge and powerful legs. Those things do seem to be present right here. The biggest drawback is, of course, it does lack feathers, which makes sense because obviously feathers are a relatively recent thing that had been more widely accepted amongst paleontologists and especially by the people who were making movies and things like that. Ornithomimus is a dinosaur that we do have direct fossil evidence of possessing feathers. Like we know that Ornithomimus had feathers, but they didn't know that at the time, really. So this is certainly just a dated depiction of the animal. Although feathers on a dinosaur like Ornithomimus certainly does make sense with hindsight, especially with how bird-like these animals are. I mean, literally the word Ornithomimus translates to bird mimic, but I digress. The colors are also very interesting on this one too, kind of like a mixture of pink and purple. The purple is certainly an interesting color. I wonder if we'll see that again. And the body doesn't really look bad. I like how it has a little bit of bulk in its neck and the rest of its body. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool depiction. And then it's pretty fun. Moving on from that is the ceratopsian of the movie, that being Styracosaurus. This is also a very dated depiction. It's fairly decently accurate for the time. A lot of old paleo art would certainly portray a Styracosaurus looking like this, with a very huge rounded body with a tail that kind of droops down and drags around, very lizard-like. Like, this was still certainly a point in time when most people were thinking of dinosaurs as giant lizards, when in reality, of course, they're not. Styracosaurus in reality, of course, did have a smaller body with a tail that was raised off of the ground and a head that was a lot more separated from the body. As the Styracosaurus that's presented here, its frill and its like head is just very close to the rest of the body. It almost looks like the frill is resting on its body most of the time. Its legs also seem to be a little bit too rounded and huge, a lot more elephant-like, when in reality, of course, ceratopsians have very reptilian-like feet and legs. But it does possess things like the nasal horn, which is something that Styracosaurus did have, and those sort of epiccipitals that it has on its frill, which are those long spikes that stick up, a very defining trait of Styracosaurus. It also sports this very interesting sort of purple coloration, which is a very interesting coloration to have. I wonder if we'll ever see that again. And then finally, there's essentially like the big bad of the film, that being Gwangi, aka possibly the Allosaurus, aka possibly Tyrannosaurus, aka possibly. There's a little bit of debate on what exactly Gwangi is supposed to represent. I believe that there's like some of the filmmakers, they kind of just like portrayed Gwangi as like a generic theropod. Like, you could call it a T-Rex, you could call it an Allosaurus, you could call it really any theropod that was well known at that time. I generally I call it an Allosaurus. I lean more so into that direction. In fact, I included it in my many interpretations of Allosaurus video because, for one, it does kind of look a little bit more reminiscent to those older Allosaurus reconstructions. It also does have 3 fingers, and no one has ever outwardly said that this is meant to be a Tyrannosaurus. Not like, Fantasia, where the filmmakers literally state that that theropod is meant to be Tyrannosaurus. So my gut says Allosaurus, so that's what we're going to be calling it right here. Again, it is very dated. It's got more of like an upright tripod stance where some of the time its tail is dragging around, but it does lift its tail up every once in a while, and it does kind of slope down into a little bit of a horizontal stance, which is a little bit more accurate. Again, it does have 3 fingers on each hand, which is something that Allosaurus did have, and there's a lot of times where it seems like its hands are facing the proper direction, as in they're facing inward with their palms facing each other. The head is, of course, a lot more rounded and blocky, which is very different from the way that Allosaurus's head truly was. Allosaurus had a more elongated snout that was a little bit more thin compared to what you see right here. It also does lack these structures known as lacrimal crests, which are those very interesting crests that you see that grow right before the animal's eyes. Rather, it just kind of has like pronounced eyebrow ridges. But again, this is a very typical theropod dinosaur design for the time. One thing that's also worth mentioning is that you do see its skin texturing right here, and it's overall kind of like a lot more pebbly with large, scales every so often. It almost looks like it has feature scales. Allosaurus, we do have skin impressions for it, and overall it seems like it likely had mostly a smooth texture. Like, it had very small scales that, from a distance would look a little bit more smooth. But it does have like huge and powerful legs and a long tail that, again, does sometimes drag around, but sometimes you do see it lift up. It also does possess this really interesting sort of purple coloration, which is a very interesting coloration to have. I wonder if we'll ever see that again. Oh, we won't. Okay, never mind. Barney. It's Barney, we can say that one. But yeah, those were the creatures of the Valley of Gwangi. There's, they're very dated designs. And I love designs like this because they're pretty representative of the time. I mean, to be fair though, I do think that some of these designs might have been fairly outdated even by the time the movie came out, but they're still pretty good analogs for the way that most people view dinosaurs at the time. Now, of course, I'm not tearing down this film for the way that it looks. I actually do really like this film. I think it's a lot of fun. These videos are mostly done for educational purposes. I'm mostly just like using them as analogs to talk about the real life animal, those little comparisons. Obviously, things do change over time the more we learn about specific animals. And we've certainly learned a lot more about Allosaurus and Styracosaurus and Ornithomimus and Pteranodon since the Valley of Gwangi came out back in 1969. They're very fun though, and the special effects in this movie is very good. Like, one scene that always comes to mind is the lasso scene where everybody's trying to lasso Gwangi. It's all done so well, and it's just very engaging, and I just really love it. It's a very entertaining film. So yeah, that's the Valley of Gwangi. We will get to the Jurassic World shows eventually. It's just, again, I want to take a little bit of a break from that aspect of the Jurassic franchise right now. So yeah, we'll continue doing something like this. I might try to knock out most, if not all, dinosaur projects projects out there, movies and shows included, because this is just a really fun thing. You know, I'm having a lot of fun with it. So I don't know what we'll do next, but I'll figure it out. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you so much to all my patrons and my channel members. You guys are all helping out tremendously, and I appreciate each and every one of you. If you wish to help support me and the channel, the link for that is, of course, down below, and I really would appreciate your help. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.